highlight them in chat, and then I'll specifically call them out if you need it. We are now live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a fireside chat on quantum gaming. I hope everybody is ready to have a fantastic time. Are we here to talk about the future of computing? Are people excited?
We are. We are.
Hello, Wendy. Hello, Alec. Hello, Spirit. Halloween. Fantastic name. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, awesome. All right, so we're going to officially start the event now. Welcome all. This is a quantum gaming Q&A with the Quantum Game Jam crew, created by Quantum Realm Games and in partnership with Caltech and LCAD. Joining us today is Chris as well as Spyros, who've both worked in the quantum space for quite some time. Spyros, I believe you did some work with Marvel in the past.
That's right. Just a quick, well, I wish my name was Spyros because it'd be Spyro the Dragon then, and I would have all the cool cred. Spiros will do, but I had the pleasure of working with Marvel about 10 years ago in 2014. Paul Rudd called and he was like, we need an expert on what happens when people shrink for Ant-Man. It was before the movie came out. And I flew out to Atlanta, Pinewood Studios, and I spent an evening with Paul, who was in his sweats because he was doing some superhero training, right, to get ripped. And I ended up introducing inadvertently the quantum realm into the Marvel Cinematic Universe through all of that. So that's been fun since then.
Wow. You get a casual conversation, casual phone call from Paul Rudd is not something I think many people have had the privilege of saying.
It pays to do math and quantum physics, I guess, at some point, you know? You never know when you're going to need your personal quantum physicist. Yeah.
Very true. I mean, I have never run into that problem myself, but, you know, I'll call you when it happens. And also joining us is Chris. Chris is the founder of Quantum Realm Games and has spent the past couple of years making an SDK to allow other people to create quantum games as well. Chris, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am A-OK. And then finally, we got Christina Marie. Christina is now a recruiter over at Ghost Punch and is going to be our host for the event. Hi, Christina. How are you doing?
Hi, Willem. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. And of course, you got Willem. I'm here just to act largely as a sort of facilitator and make sure this event rocks. And all of you get the chance to learn about quantum computers as well as quantum gaming, and more importantly, the Quantum Game Jam. So we got roped into this this adventure with the smart people in this room to host a game jam specifically for all of you to play with actual quantum tooling. You'll be able to make your own games using quantum functionality as if you had a full quantum machine at your fingertips, which is why all of you should join the Quantum Game Jam starting November 2nd. I'm going to drop the links in the various chats down below right now. But that's as much as I'm going to say about it. I'm going to leave it to the rest of you to talk about your areas of expertise. And this event is largely meant as a chance for everyone to learn how quantum computing actually works, and then what this SDK, what these tools actually look like. So Christina Marie, without further ado, why don't you take over and tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I think Willem really nailed it on the head. I do want to give kind of everyone in our room a little bit of a chance to introduce himself. Spiros kind of kicked us off with his wonderful Paul Rudd story. So for a fun icebreaker, Chris, do you have any fun celebrity moments? And why don't you tell us a little about you and how you and Spiros had your meet cute?
Yeah, so Spiros and I go back about 10 years now. I was a grad student at USC and made a fun little prototype of a game that was genuinely quantum in nature. Like under the hood, it relied on actual quantum mechanics. Spiros had a little bit of experience in the space with a collaboration he did with Google. He made a mod for Minecraft called QCraft, where players can interact with quantum-inspired phenomena, I would say. He'll be the first to tell you that it was fake. It wasn't actual quantum. It was just trying to convey some ideas in quantum through just inspiration, basically. And so when I showed him what I had, he got very excited, said this is the real thing. So we started collaborating, meeting once a week, talking about the game that I had made, which was not quantum chess, but figuring out how to make it bigger and better. and over the course of about a year plus, it became Quantum Chess. And at around that time, Spiros was doing an event at Caltech, and they used Quantum Chess in a YouTube video. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It's called Anyone Can Quantum. It's Paul Rudd playing quantum chess against Stephen Hawking. That was like one of the earliest versions of quantum chess that was available. That wasn't even available to the public. But my fun, I guess, story is that off of that video, we got some hype. I ran a Kickstarter, and as part of the Kickstarter, Paul Rudd sent me a promotional little clip of him playing quantum chess and making fun of the graphics. So we got to show that during the Kickstarter just to generate some hype for it. And successful Kickstarter, and that helped put it out to the world. It kind of took on a life of its own after that, and led to a collaboration with Google wanting to run quantum chess on their actual quantum computing hardware. So we successfully did that, and it's kind of gone from there. As Will said, the last little bit has been trying to take like all the lessons I learned from quantum chess and the code and math and stuff, and make it a little more generic so that you could build tools around it to put quantum in other games. So yeah, that's been the big push for me for a little bit now. So
Totally.
I wanted to add something quickly. Another fun tidbit that I don't even know if Chris is aware of, but when we were filming the video, so Stephen Hawking, it was the easier one to get to say yes. Caltech, we've been friends, I guess, for some time. But to get Paul, I got Paul, well, because I had worked with him on Ant-Man, but also by telling him that Stephen Hawking was really excited to actually play, quantum chess against him, which of course wasn't true. Like, I used the same idea on both of them, and I told Stephen Hawking that Paul Rudd was very excited to play him in quantum chess. So they both got pretty excited and hyped, but then I still needed somebody to do the voiceover, right? The play-by-play. And so I got lucky and got Keanu Reeves to actually do the, the voiceover. And one of the most fun experiences of my life was we're in Santa Monica here in Los Angeles, and I see him for the first time. I saw him in person. We were in one of these editing studios where he was supposed to record. And he's just this like giant of a man. If you think he's big in John Wick, I mean, in real life, he wears his bike jacket and everything. He's just, larger than life. And I see him, I'm like, Keanu, as if I've known him all my life. And he gets up, he's like, oh, you must be Spiros. And I was like, oh my God, I'll die happy right now. And he's reading the script that we had put together. And at the very end, right, the way, and you should watch the video, there is a checkmate or something like a checkmate, right? Between you have a king and a bishop, if I'm not mistaken, and you're supposed to just win, right? And he turns to me, he's like, Spiro, I think there's a mistake in the script. And I'm like, okay. You can never checkmate with just like a king and a bishop. I was like, what? This guy knows his chess, right? He loves chess. But my retort was like, that's right, but you can in quantum chess, right? And he was like, he literally gave me a genuine wow, right? And so that's when he really became part of this and got excited. And the rest is kind of history. So.
Did you know that, Chris? Was that something that you had heard before, that anecdote?
Yes, I had heard that story before. I forgot.
Okay. Whoa, I see all the woes in the chat. I'm very starstruck as someone who's been lucky enough to grace some red carpets. I don't think that my celebrity fandomness, rivals Spiros's in any capacity. As a recruiter, I don't do a ton, right, of networking with physicists or anything like that. So for someone like me, why don't you break down in the simplest of terms, as if you were talking to my very Ant-Man loving 2-year-old, kind of what the gist is kind of behind quantum computing, and what we can expect from that, or what that's like.
Chris, should I start with that? And then add? So one of the most interesting things about quantum computing, besides the hype, is that it is all real. Like, it will happen and it will be revolutionary, probably beyond AI. And the cool thing about it is that you can think of quantum computing as just parallel computing, massively parallel computing, but that actually is not quite correct. Right? There's usually a mistake that we make when we think of it that way. And parallel computing, you can think of these tiny processors, the GPUs or ASICs or whatever, NVIDIA 8100s, and you put them in parallel. You put like thousands and thousands of them, and then you thread the information, the computation through, and you try to break up a very long number of computational steps to solve problems into a very wide in space number of steps, right? That is short in time. And with a quantum computer, what is really cool is that it's almost like the opposite of a supercomputer. A supercomputer is a massive amount of little computers in our universe, right? On Earth currently. And you try to deploy them at the same time. As quantum computer is the complement of that. It is one computer across the multiverse. Inside of a quantum computer, the very first step is to create what we call a quantum superposition. You create a very, very large number of internal universes that are basically real, and each of them is entangled, connected with our universe in some way, right? The outside environment. But internal to the quantum computer, you can run actual like algorithms, regular classical algorithms, you can think, but in every single one of these universes at the same time. And so up to that point, it's just massively parallel compute, which is basically, you can do miracles, right, at that level. But you have to come back to our universe. You have to give us humans, right, outside of the quantum computer, the answer. And that final step is where all of the ingenuity of quantum physicists and quantum software designers comes in, try to gather all the beautiful information that is spread across a massive number of universes in this internal multiverse and bring it back to us. And the cool thing about quantum games, the reason why I'm so excited, is that quantum games are quantum algorithms, very ingenious quantum algorithms that are also kind of intuitive, right, as you build them. So what can you do with that?
I was going to say, what I'm hearing is we all get to be Loki at the end of Loki. For those of you who have not seen the Loki show, cover your ears, I'm about to spoil it, but we all get to be Loki at the end on the throne holding the multiverse together is what I hear, despite the fact that we, like myself, may not be a quantum physicist, which is pretty exciting. I'm a Loki fanatic. I could be a she-Loki and hold the multiverse together. That's exciting. Chris, how do you see this kind of playing into the game side, or what does that look like on the game side?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, and one of the common, I hesitate to call it a misconception, but the first place people's brain go is when they hear quantum computing in games, it's like, oh, quantum computers are going to be way faster than normal computers, and they're just going to make us make better games, like do the things that we're already doing, but faster and better. So the first misconception I want to correct is that they're not just faster computers. I liken it to a GPU, right? So a GPU is not a general purpose computer. You still have your CPU, you still have all the parts of that. The GPU is there to solve very specific problems in linear algebra, right? So it's a component that is used that when you have these specific problems, you ship it off to the GPU and it can do it better than your CPU. Mm-hmm. A quantum computer is going to be a similar type setup. You're going to have, whether it's a QPU or some cloud resource or something like that, where if you're doing very specific computing type problems that are tailored to run well on a quantum computing resource, you'll ship those off to the quantum computer and then get the answer back. So there are some things in game development, game design that could benefit from this ability to compute certain types of problems faster. There's some people in the space that are working on this with like procedural generation and stuff like that, but that's still a long way away because we still don't have, I would say, utility quantum computers yet. We're still in the experimental stage. Think of where we're at with quantum computing right now as like the early days of computing where you're just inventing the transistor, right? So you couldn't even consider games like even Doom or old school games on that level of computer. You're talking about like tennis for two and Pong and stuff like that. So what I want to do with quantum in games is use games as a way to allow anyone to experience real quantum phenomena. And this will get scale with the capabilities of our quantum computers as they get better and better, the quantum phenomena in them can become more and more complex. But we can do interesting and fun things with today's hardware that isn't really, like, I guess, useful at like an enterprise level where like a finance company might be interested in quantum computing for better financial algorithms and stuff like that. We're still quite a ways away from stuff like that. But with games, we can do stuff right now. And we can do things that we can simulate right now. And so we can use games as a way to explore actual quantum phenomena in the form of game mechanics, so that we as humans can experience them outside of like some university lab or something like that. And I think just like there are algorithms out there that can only be run on a quantum computer because it would take the lifetime of a universe to try and compute these things on a classical computer, there could very well be game mechanics out there that are like native to quantum that we haven't discovered yet because we haven't been able to discover them yet. We're just entering the era now where we can start exploring the space and see what can we do with creating new human experiences that are quantum in nature that can only be run on the future quantum computers. So we can start kind of like dipping our toe in the water now with the simulator that I provide with the SDK and the tool set, and running on actual like early quantum computing hardware.
Well, and I think you touched on something pretty important that I can kind of draw back right to the game space. So back in the day, right, you're right, we did have very basic game mechanics, right? We had like Pong and we had Snake. We had these very basic games, and it was kind of the Wild West. And we're still starting to see some of those like Wild West capabilities finally being defined, right? As we're looking at the frontier of AI and how is that playing into kind of again a Wild West frontier aspect, you're now bringing in kind of a new, I don't want to say cutting edge, so that's stereotypical, but like you're bringing in like new life into that Wild West frontier, into what the future could be and how we could implement something new into the game space. So for those of you listening, right, this is kind of a fun opportunity to kind of, for me as a recruiter, you can kind of add this to your skill bank as something new and exciting to play with, that for me, I would find it to be interesting enough to prospectively want to talk to you more about it. So from a selfish recruiting standpoint, this is all kind of great information to think about how you can apply this to your own life, and what, participating in the game jam, we'll talk about a little later, can actually play into separating yourself as kind of a new candidate. Chris, why don't you talk a little bit to us about like what this SDK is and how you iterated on it and what that process was like, and what we can kind of expect from that.
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. It's something that I've always wanted to build, both selfishly to be able to iterate on games faster and make my own prototypes faster, but also to get other minds in the game development industry and in the world exploring concepts in quantum through games. The hard part with trying to develop quantum games is, of course, all of the math under the hood, right? I mean, you have to go through a lot of education to get to the point where you can do all the math and understand it and stuff like that. But then once you have that, you can use it, right? And so I wanted to take that hurdle away. So I took basically all of the math that I did for quantum chess and all of the code that I wrote to create a quantum simulation that runs quantum chess, and I pulled it out and like made it more generic so you can build other things on top of that. And I've been kind of working on this with some collaborators for the past few years. I'll throw out the name Conrad Holt. He was a former Google engineer. He got excited about quantum chess and has helped us with a lot of the projects on quantum chess. He helped with a lot of the early pulling out of the engine and stuff like that from quantum chess to make the first versions of the quantum game engine. And then earlier this year, I sat down and started experimenting with it to see if I could prototype a few different types of games on top of it. And I just found it lacking in a number of places. So I kind of started from scratch in February and just rebuilt the entire thing from the ground up to support the workflow that I needed and that I envisioned other game developers might need to be able to add quantum effects into their game without needing to worry about all of the math and the simulation that's happening under the hood. And so I built out this library, and then I've built a set of tools on top of it in Unity, where you can have, say, a game object in Unity, and you can put a quantum property on it. So a component, it's a model behavior component, that's a quantum property you put on this game object in Unity, and you tell it what types of values you can take. So for instance, if you're making a rock, paper, scissors game, the values you might be interested are rock, paper, and scissors, right? Well, now if you supply these to a quantum property, that thing can exist in a superposition of being rock, paper, and scissors all at the same time. And so now you can start building gameplay around that. And I built some other tools around it to get information about the underlying superposition state. So like, what are the probabilities that it'll be rock or paper or scissors? What is the joint probability that two different things that are in this superposition might come to be rock at the same time, right? Stuff like that. So there's a bunch of tools that have the ability to give you useful information that you can start building like UI elements and player experiences around. But all of the simulation and all of the math is stuff that you just really don't even have to worry about now. It's all handled by the engine itself.
So it sounds like it doesn't necessarily mean that me as the player has to or will be traveling between like these various universes and multiverses. It's more some of those back-end mathematical components that can influence multiple layers of a world. If I'm kind of following along.
Yes. And a lot of that will come down to the choice of the designer, right? So the tools are there for if you wanted to expose the player to this multiverse and their ability to kind of hop between them, well, that's a design choice you can make, and the tools are there to be able to do that. Or you can just present them with a single view that is like just a probabilistic view of like, okay, well, maybe I'm in this universe versus that universe, and then later something will happen where the game will, what we call measure, where it'll look at it and say, okay, is this piece here, or is the player there, or is it this color, whatever like that. And then that will have some deciding effect on what happens in your game. So there's a lot of flexibility for the designer there. Obviously, the more you come to understand working with quantum effects, the better you'll be at this. But I mean, that's like any game design, right? You start small.
Absolutely.
You start by dipping your toe in, and then you can build up the complexity. Just like I did with quantum chess. I mean, I did not have quantum chess at first, right? I had this little rinky-dink like 5x5 board where there's one kind of piece and it just kind of hopped around and split and stuff like that. And it wasn't fun, it wasn't interesting, but it was quantum at its core. And over the course of, I should say, many years and many rewrites, it built up to become this much more complex and rich gameplay experience that is now quantum chess. So
it sounds
yeah.
like ultimately, as we look at the types of games, right? Like we kind of talked about a couple. We talked about like potential rock paper scissors. We talked about chess and what your rinky-dink beginner game was. But it sounds like ultimately, as we kind of navigate through learning and what the potentials are, we do kind of see similarities now in the game space, right? Like it could potentially be limitless in terms of what you could design as you learn and get more integrated, which is, I think, kind of pretty exciting there. Spiros, what are you looking at in terms of kind of your hopes for these quantum elements and quantum computing looking for the future of games?
To me, I think the most exciting part of all of this is that we have no idea what it feels like to write stories and to create characters that are quantum, genuinely quantum in nature. And even if you start to get an intuitive feel, like Chris loves to say about quantum, in the same way that you throw a ball and gravity just takes care of the rest, and we all live through it, right? So you don't have to calculate Einstein's general relativity when you're playing baseball. It's not even, what excites me more is not just the mechanistic aspect of that we'll get better intuition about the quantum realm through playing around with it via games, is that you'll end up having emotional reactions to specific aspects of quantum physics, of the quantum realm, in the same way that you can fall in love with an AI right now. And not long ago, that would have been like laughed on, right? Unless you're a big anime fan like I am. And then you have chibis and, all this, the Japanese history of all of this stuff, simply because the technology wasn't there. So you couldn't really imagine what it would feel like, right? You're like, it's clunky, it's like, the disillusionment value or whatever they call it. So when we're getting closer and closer to, through games, of having real quantum effects, weapons, quantum weapons, right? How cool is that? Storylines that are genuinely quantum. I'm working with a consulting with AAA game studio, and they're genuinely excited. They reached out to me to be like, can you connect me with Chris also, and we can talk real genuine quantum mechanics, right, and gameplay instead of just narrative, which is what they've done before, right? So I'm just very excited about that. And the reason why we're also doing this is because we want all the beautiful creative brains that are listening right now to start thinking about character development, not concept development. That we've done, as quantum physicists for some time, but
Sure.
character development.
Yeah, awesome. Chris, anything that it kind of excites you? I mean, you've kind of talked a little bit about it, but anything that you're kind of hoping for or excited about when it comes to what the future could be as we think big and kind of aspire big here?
I mean, I am excited to see if we can discover quantum native game mechanics that you can't do with a classical computer. I mean, obviously in the early days we're still using a simulator, and so we'll still be able to do it with a classical computer, but games are an opportunity. So there's a lot of people who feel like games are just toys and not to be taken seriously. I see it completely differently. Games are an opportunity to explore ideas and universes that you can't easily explore outside of in any other medium. I mean, how do you explore the effect of existing in superposition or being entangled with other things outside of a game? It gives players and designers and developers the ability to explore these new universes and ideas, right? And so I see games as a way to explore the potential of quantum mechanics in a way that we can control, right? So Spiros spoke earlier about the parallelization of like quantum computing, right? So the big thing that quantum computers do is they let you solve problems with less steps, right? So at some point we will be able to solve problems with so many fewer steps that a classical computer can perform that it would be impossible for a classical computer to even compete. But in games, we can inject artificial constraints. Like you can have a game mechanic where the player is constrained to use a certain number of resources, and then you give them access to quantum effects, and maybe the only way to solve this one problem in your game is to use quantum effects to efficiently use the resources they're given. A classical use might not be able to solve that same problem with the limited amount of resources that you provide as the game designer. So we can explore all of these ideas in a controlled way, even though we don't have massive quantum computers yet. So it's very possible that even before we get to that point, we can discover quantum game mechanics that will be impossible to run on classical computers, and you'll need an actual like real giant quantum computer to experience this new thing. I have kind of this pet dream project of a VR world where the player exists as a quantum thing in this VR world. And I've said before, this touches not just like game mechanics design. What does that even look like to a player? How do you, as a UX designer, convey meaningful information to the player? It touches art. I mean, is part of it sound? Like, do you have like overlapping sound waves conveying superposition to the player in some way? If there's entanglement in the game, does that sound just naturally sound different to players? So there's all sorts of areas where you can explore what quantum means in a new way. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple of questions here, Willem, that I definitely want to touch on. Chris, I see some questions about like what the SDK would be compatible with in terms of Unity. So are we looking at 4, 5? How does that look right now?
Right now, I'm building it in 2022, Unity 2022. So I don't know. They changed their versioning at some point, so I'm not sure where that falls in the versioning.
So Willem, you might be able to answer better than I am because I don't ever touch engine. Is that 5?
That is 5. That is not yet 6.
Yeah.
But for the game jam, I think I assume you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, Chris. We're going to have everybody use the same version of Unity, and then post game jam, it might be updated for other versions of Unity. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. The long-term plan is to make it as compatible with Unity, Unreal, other game engines as we can. We're really, really early. Like I said, I rebuilt this thing. I've been working on it since February. We were just hit code complete at the end of August, and I've spent the last month and a half building the Unity tools on top of it. So everyone who uses it, there are alpha testers. They're getting their hands on this before anyone else in the world has. They're also telling me, okay, as a game designer and developer, this is what I would need to build more interesting stuff around it.
Mm-hmm.
I've put what I felt like I needed. I've built 3 prototypes on it already. And so I've built some tools that I needed to build those prototypes, but I'm sure there's stuff I've missed. And the game jam is it's my test bed. So I hope it doesn't break. There might be some areas where it breaks, and then I'll have to go in and fix it on the fly. But it's really exciting for me to get this in the hands of people. And then, like you said, Will, afterwards we plan on making it more robust, build it out further to support older versions of Unity. Unreal is a target, definitely. So.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
that.
So I think there's a. Oh, go ahead.
I would put forward. Yeah, I just want to put forward that is very much a feature, not a bug. Being a part of something so early on, and therefore figuring out extra aspects that might be really cool for this, other ways that we can simulate and use quantum gaming inside of our own game development is honestly really cool. One of the things that I love about games, and you touched upon this, Chris, is that it's still, frankly, such a young field. A lot of our masters, the people who invented a lot of the genres that we play today, are still alive making games. So this is just a new area that we're exploring, game development, and the people who will join this jam are literally the first people in the world playing with this tool set and with quantum gaming at all. So yes, there's going to be bugs, but that's good.
Spiros, you had something to add, it looks like.
Yes, I wanted to say something else. For me, one of the most exciting aspects besides this character development in the quantum realm is the fact that, and again, the idea that it's a feature, not a bug, the fact that we don't have fault-tolerant, large-scale quantum computers yet, even though I believe we'll have some really good stuff in the next 3 to 5 years, is that getting in early, you can turn quantum resources in the game, any quantum resource, right? Because you cannot have that many, into a very rare resource, something that makes your game really exciting, right? You can leverage the fact that you cannot have a lot of these things to make them shine every time you add a quantum property into your game. And this can be very exciting, again, that you get a very rare weapon like Zelda or something, and you wait until the very end to get the sword, right? Or something amazing specific that changes. And it could be space limited or time limited resource that is very exciting. Even Fortnite, imagine the world splits into 2 all of a sudden, right? And you're trying to figure out which one is going to be the one which survives. And this idea of existing in superposition, but then not for very long, and trying to make the best of it for as long as you're in there, could be very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if it wasn't already clear, this game jam, yes, I just want to say, since I work in the educational space, and so just to be very clear, this game jam has 8 hours of live instruction with the very people in this room and a couple of other very smart people, as well as mentors for every team. This is a free game jam. We are using tools that are not available to anybody on the planet, and you're getting taught by some of the smartest people on the planet. Just to hype it up for one more second.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do want to take kind of the last 5-ish minutes here that we have, and before we kind of move into Q&A, and just kind of talk about kind of the game jam itself. So Willem, you kind of touched on it. So the game jam itself is partnering with Chris and Spiros, and you have, like Willem said, you will have lecture time with some of the greatest minds when you kind of think about quantum and how that's going to play into this. There will be industry-specific mentors. So we've got some mentors from pretty big studios. So you're looking at, your Amazon, your Apple Arcade from different facades and different facets of the industry. So we've got some pretty big people coming in there, high res. So some pretty good mentors when you look at what you have as you kind of get coached through for the week. And then flexible timing. So it's not something you're going to sit down and crunch for just one weekend. You will have kind of the whole week to work on it. As we talk about the game jam, what kind of are some of the things that you are hoping for or looking to get out of it, or anything you want to mention, Chris Spiros, about the game jam itself and what people can be excited about or looking forward to?
I mean, I'm the most exciting thing for me is obviously going to be to see what people can come up with. I saw in passing a question in chat about like what other kinds of games might this apply to other than quantum chess, and use your imagination. I created a little platformer demo. I mean, try and get creative. I want to see what other kinds of games that people find new and interesting ways to apply this to. I have an idea for like a factory style game like Factorio or Satisfactory or something like that, where you could put quantum in to like increase the efficiency of whatever it is you're producing, stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't think it's limited, and I'm only one person. I want to see what a lot of people can put their brains together and create.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Spiros, any thoughts that you have about kind of the game jam and what people can expect or what that will look like?
I think it was mentioned earlier, but this is kind of a historic event. Like all of human history, you'll have the opportunity for the first time to mess around with quantum without needing to have a PhD. And even then, even if you have a PhD, you cannot build that kind of intuition, right? You can do the math, the linear algebra, the differential equations, all this good stuff. But when you actually see quantum at play, literally you're just drag drop and you add a quantum property, and all of a sudden you start messing around. You're developing stuff that nobody else would be able to do. Like it's just going to come out of you and you won't even realize that you had it in you. And I think that's really exciting because both as alpha testers, you'll be able to give Chris and myself and a couple of others feedback, like how do you move forward, right?
Yeah.
And it's also something extremely, again, it's the most unique thing you may ever do in your life, right? It'll be really cool if at some point there's a whole new genre of gaming, and it's just quantum gaming. Everything from not just narrative, right, or UI UX aspects or audio aspects, just full on. It's a different type of game, and it is genuinely quantum, right? So it's exciting to see what will come out of this first. There'll be more game jams down the road, because again, this is more like also to test the SDK, right, that Chris put together. But I have a feeling there'll be some really cool game mechanics that come out of it, some interesting characters, and then we just off to the races.
I will say
want to
for me
emphasize
too.
one other thing. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
Just that a lot of people hear the word quantum and they're afraid, and I imagine that's going to be what we're running into here too. I will be available. Spiros is going to be available to help if you're running into issues like, okay, well, I want to make this thing quantum, but I'm still not quite understanding how that might apply here, to help you get through that. And we plan on having like even some Caltech students that have been studying quantum as part of the teams to help with the game engineers, help them kind of figure things out, the game designers, UI, UX, stuff like that, to mesh the two worlds. And you bring in the science expertise, you bring in the engineering expertise, the development expertise, UI expertise, and bring them together to create something. So not everyone has to be an expert, right? The idea with these tools is to lower the barrier to entry, and we will have expertise to help walk through kind of the mental barriers to that. So.
And that's what I was going to say. I think that there is a pretty unique opportunity here for us to really create, right, remove right? The barrier to entry, like you said. Like there's somebody like me, like I'm a recruiter. I don't touch the pipeline. I've done 2 game jams in my entire life. But even I am like excited about what people who do touch this could create or could come up with. And I know that if I wanted to, I too could jump in and maybe serve in a production capacity without having to actually do the math and the science part of it myself, but still be able to leave a fingerprint, right, in the future of this. So if you are someone who is concerned about the math or you know, the ability to understand the physics of quantum at a core level, you will have support for this, and it is team based. So you will be paired up with a team. So maybe, you know, we can fill in some of those stop gaps if you're not someone like, I don't have an engineering background. To me, that's all completely different language. So, you know, kind of being able to fill in that capacity to make sure that this team does work well together, and kind of fill in all the needs from art to the quantum piece, to physics, to engineering, to narrative, to character, to production. So we will kind of cover as much as we can with our applicants, the various parts of the pipeline realistically. And then again, as needed, there will be support from the big professionals in the room, Chris, Spiros, and then some, who are actually studying this very, very extensively. I do want to open it up, Willem, if you want to feed us some Q&A we haven't touched on or things that we could dive deeper into. I think at this point we could do that for the next, 15 or so minutes and go from there.
Yeah,
Can
there's
I
a
add
bunch of.
something quickly?
Oh, go ahead.
If I may, because this is part of the questions I'm also seeing on the chat. Chris, can I ask you, how long did it actually take you to create the first prototype once you had the library?
So I've created a couple of prototypes. The first one was rock, paper, scissors. That took me a couple of days. Most of that time was spent building the gameplay of rock, paper, scissors. Actually putting the quantum in it took like 5 minutes. Second prototype I made was the little platformer demo. So my goal with that one was to say, okay, if I have a pre-existing game, how difficult is it to add quantum to it? And so I downloaded off of the Unity asset store an example of a platformer. And within an hour, I had a working demo of a platformer with quantum effects in it. So I'm super happy with how well these tools have worked out. So I'm hoping other people will be too.
This is what I want to say here, that if you're worried about the quantum aspect of the game development, don't be. That is the easiest part. It is literally like drag and drop. The hardest part is doing the classical game mechanics, and then you're like, oh, but I want this to have a superposition, or I want this to have like a different kind of mechanic. This thing should take you about like 10, 15 minutes, right? You know, and even if it takes you an hour, that's insane, which means that you're not going to become a quantum expert or a math genius in 10 to 15 minutes, right? That's the point. Like, you don't need to worry about any of this. Is way easier than integrating AI or any other tools you've ever had to, new tools that show up as part of a Unity library SDK. It's that simple, right? Forget almost that this is quantum. It's just, it's a name, a word we put, right? The ideas are just so freaking simple. Once you
I'd say the hard part's the creativity.
Mm-hmm. That's really, from my perspective, why we're here in this room and why we're running a game jam. Because game developers are creative folks, and they have a lot of really awesome ideas. I'm gonna dissuade a little bit of fear, and then also hopefully hype y'all up. And then I've got questions for you. So for anybody who is scared, this is a guided team-based game jam. So number one, you're going to have the smart people in this very room available to help you out. We have a TA who's going to be available for any Unity problems, as well as live office hours during the jam itself. So basically, you're going to have as much freaking help as you need. And then secondarily, so give it a shot. You can do it. We believe in you. And then secondarily, because this is so novel, because this is so cutting edge, the stuff that you come up with here very well could be genre defining in the quantum gaming space. Somebody could come up with something, you know, some little mechanic that we don't think much of just for the fun of the game jam that actually winds up being the sort of framework for how we do, or the blueprint for how we do that mechanic from here on out in any quantum enabled games, and possibly just in regular games. We're simulating the game on regular old machines here. So this could make its way into just standard, Steam games. All right. I'm actually going to start with the latest question first, because I think it's important to answer, and I think it'll help people get a better idea of what's going on. Aiden and Count Victor ask, could you please talk about that rock, paper, scissors game and it took 5 minutes to implement the quantum SDK in? What does that actually mean? How did you literally do that, Chris?
Can I show the demo?
Sure,
Can I
yeah.
share screen?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
love that idea.
Let me pull it
Everybody,
up real quick.
everybody in chat is now freaking out. Please demo. Oh my
Yes,
God, yes.
Liz, yes, you can. You can join together. Yes, you can join together. We encourage you. Bring a friend.
So
Bring 2
let me
friends.
see. There's
Bring 2 friends. Bring 5 friends. These are my friends in this room. This is my team. I will do nothing but look cute and bring snacks and make sure you take adequate eye breaks. That will be my contribution on this team.
The Quantum
me
Avengers,
see.
says Andrea.
Oh.
That's
While we
actually
wait,
just their game concept.
Spiros, that's our game concept. Spiros, what Avenger would you be if you could be an Avenger while we load this up?
Oh snap.
Oof. So my favorite comic book superhero has always been Superman. So that's from the other side. It's not even an Avenger. It's from DC. But yeah, there was an article that came out back in the days of Ant-Man that said, and Ant-Man can beat up Superman, and everybody paid attention, right? Because I had said that once you have access to the quantum realm, you can go beyond any superpower. It's a source code of all reality, unreality, superpowers, all that stuff. So I'd probably stick with Ant-Man
Okay.
and a malfunctioning regulator. Yeah, I'd
Chris?
be like,
Who would be your Avenger? What would be your Avenger on this Avengers team
Oh,
that we're
sorry.
creating here?
I was pulling. Who would be my Avenger?
Yeah, who would you be if you could be an Avenger?
I think Iron Man.
Iron Man.
Iron Man. Okay. Okay. Willem?
Oh, I didn't realize I was going to get asked. Well, we were texting about this the other day. I was going to be
You were.
boring and say Captain America. All I do is give motivational speeches and look pretty in the corner. That's my job.
Cool. I'm
I
Spider-Man.
like Iron Man.
by
Just
default.
there's no like real superpowers. He's just
Smart.
tech, you know. So
He's just brilliant tech. Just brilliant
Yes.
tech and billionaire dollars. I love
Sounds
it.
familiar.
yes.
I'm your friendly neighborhood recruiter, so I will serve as Spider-Man in this capacity.
Nice.
All right.
right,
So
let's
this
see
is
what you
the,
got, Chris.
Yeah.
Rock paper scissors demo. Let me see. It says pause to save resources. Sorry, I was resizing something. And can you guys see my screen still or no? I think not.
No, we can.
Yes, you can.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So I guess it's just paused on my side. So I'll assume you can see what I'm doing. If you can't, let me know. Okay, so it's rock, paper, scissors. So it's not a playable game. It's more a concept of a game mechanic that would be rock, paper, scissors, right? So you would still have to design some rules around this of what it means to win and lose and stuff like that. So the players can apply these quantum operations to change the rock and the paper and the scissors. What people are probably going to be interested in is where that comes from. So I have this quantum property script, right? And I just put that on this game object that represents player 1. And in that, I drag in this rock, paper, scissors scriptable object that tells you what we call them the basis values. It's kind of a scientific term, but that's basically the things that thing can be, right? So for rock, paper, and scissors, this is my scriptable object. I said it can be rock, it can be paper, it can be scissors. I put the quantum property on this game object. I tell it, these are the things that you can be. Now that thing is hooked up to my internal simulator and all the underlying tools in the library, and I can apply quantum stuff to it to change it, and that just works in the background on all of the math. So the way you change from rock to paper to scissors, so for player 1, that would be, let's go to this cycle 1 button, right? So this thing applies the cycle operation, so that's another thing that I can drag, right, to player 1. So when I hit this button or I push the C key, it just calls the apply function in this cycle, and that does all of the math under the hood for applying cycle to the quantum state of rock, paper, and scissors. When you start getting quantum is when you apply H. We call that the Hadamard. That's the thing that takes something that isn't in superposition into superposition, right? So now player one is in a superposition of being all three, rock, paper, and scissors at the same time. And what you see here is just kind of, it's just cycling through the different values it can be based on the probability that it gets back. So I have another thing here, the combined probabilities. Let me see, right? Oh, that would be this one. So I have a probability tracker, another script you can use in the game. I tell it, hey, track the probabilities for player one and player two of the things that those can be, right? And so you get this list back of all of the different things that it can be. And this is tracking both, so it says, okay, well, what's the probability that it's rock and rock? Well, that's 33%. Rock and paper, that's 33%, right? Because this thing is going through all of them, and this one is just rock. You can get entanglement in the game. I saw a question about that earlier. So I have this, let's say I hit M here, right? That does what we call a controlled operation. So it changes player two's state based on player one's state. So it creates this entangled state. Now you can see up here in the top left, the combined probabilities. So it's rock, rock, paper, paper, and scissors, scissors. That's an entangled state where they're both going to be equal. No matter which one it is, they're going to be the same, right? So you might have some artificial rule set where you want to create an entangled state, and then maybe player one wants to cycle theirs one more time. So now you've changed this internal superposition to be like paper, rock, scissors, paper, rock, scissors. So now no matter what, player one is in a state where they win, right? So they're still in this superposition, which has to be what we call measured. So it has to like pick one of them at some point. But no matter which one it picks, player one wins. And so we could trigger a measurement, like press 2, say. So I want to measure what is player two's symbol, right? So they're in this superposition of being all of them. I'm going to look at it, and it's going to modify the quantum state that's in all of the math underneath, and it's going to pick one. And you see that it picked probabilistically that player two is rock. The entanglement also means that player one is paper and player one wins, right? So most of the time spent was designing all of these gameplay elements, like how does the player interact with this thing? I have all of the components and scripts available to apply change to your quantum state and to put quantum things on game objects. And that's just easy to use. And it's all just, okay, how do I build the gameplay around it? So when I say it took 5 minutes to add quantum to rock, paper, scissors, that's literally like putting a quantum property on a thing that represents player one's symbol and telling it it can be rock, paper, and scissors. So, and then you can just build gameplay around that.
It's super fascinating and somewhat mind-bending for sure, which is part of, by the way, why we're here with a bunch of game developers, so we can ask you guys how to use this in interesting ways. For the another recent question that a lot of people are curious about, for the player experience, you've sort of answered it here, but I'd love to hear, your answer directly to the question. For the player experience, for the player playing this game, how is this different from just a standard number generator?
So the difference comes when you start giving the player access to these quantum effects, right? So if it's just superposition, it's just probability. It's just a number generator. Because when you measure it, it probabilistically picks one of those based on a number generation. But when you start giving them access to the full set of quantum effects where you generate entanglement, for those that are more technical in the audience, there's phase and interference and things like that that you can generate. Those effects let the player sort of push the probabilities where they want them and generate correlated effects with other quantum things that are in your game. So you can get these, you could probably do quantum teleportation in this, right? So I was able to recreate one of the classic quantum algorithms that quantum physics students are introduced to first, as like, hey, here's something that you can do only because it's quantum and classical can't do it. And this is like the first thing you learn because it's like the simplest algorithm. It's not useful, but it's a clear demonstration of what we call quantum advantage. I recreated a demo of that as a potential game mechanic. And it works because it's quantum. So when you have more than just superposition, when you have the ability to generate entanglement and adjust the phases of the state underneath to generate the interference you want to push probabilities to be like more rock or more paper or more scissors as a player, then you can get more than just random number generation.
I want to say it in a maybe slightly different way that hopefully will blow people's minds here and, reveal the complexity of what Chris has built under the hood. Imagine, most of us have played with Legos at some point, or Minecraft for that matter, right? And you can think of Minecraft as being a pixelated simulation of anything you can ever imagine building in the world. You can build a Taj Mahal, you can build even computers, right? With redstone and all that stuff. Think of the quantum realm, which is the universe. Everything in the universe, from the most microscopic scale to the full universe or multiverse, is what we call the quantum realm, right? First of all. Now, with Chris's library, you have access to create within a game your own infinitely complex quantum realm. There is nothing missing. It is a universal quantum computing resource. In other words, every algorithm we will ever try to run on a quantum computer, a large one, right, could be turned into a game using the SDK. You have access to every quantum gate, right, to every quantum Lego block that you would need to build anything you can ever imagine within the quantum realm. So from that point of view, it is definitely not classical or just probabilistic. It's just that we are used to, as human beings, of thinking of quantum as the shadow of the real aspect of the quantum realm, right? The shadows is the things we usually explore, which is the probabilistic aspect of it. But there's a lot of internal complexity, a lot of internal richness in the texture of the quantum realm that you will have access to. And over time, you'll provide yourself and everybody else in the world intuitive views into that complexity.
Super fascinating. I have a couple of quick questions for the sake of getting people into the jam. So the first one, and we've basically already answered this, but to say it nice and clearly, do I need a quantum computer or even a powerful computer to join this jam?
I'm running this on my laptop.
If your computer can run Unity, you'll be good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Here's an interesting question. Is the use of the SDK required to join the jam? So one person in the audience is very technically minded, so they're talking about spoofing some of the functionality.
I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to take this one. I already replied in chat. The answer is yes. I mean, we're going to want this to be part of the core functionality. And I think it would be a disservice to your team to try to spoof it when the rest of them are also trying to integrate and get it excited and get used to it. So for all intents and purposes, I would say, yes, this will be a part of a core functionality of this particular jam. And we do want you to be able to be the first to experiment and put fingerprint on, right, the SDK and feedback. So I would say the answer at this is yes.
I want to add a different dimension to this answer, which is that even if you are like a world expert, right, you're somebody who already works with one of the big tech companies, a quantum division, the reason for this game jam and what you can also help offer, and we said something like that earlier, is to create an SDK, right, and upgrade the SDK with feedback so that everybody else who does not have 20 years of experience with quantum physics and programming on Qiskit or QSharp or any of that can play around with, right? So it is as much of a open source kind of thing in creating something for a much larger community. It doesn't have the math background as it is like, oh, but I don't need to to use this. Well, trust me, you do need to use it anyways. It will make your life much easier, even if you could do everything from scratch, because it took 10 years for Chris, right? With my guidance also to get to that place, to abstract away the things that are necessary to create interesting games.
Awesome.
I want to add a little bit of motivation too. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, and then we will wrap up.
Yeah, so when I set out to create quantum chess, I went to look to see what was out there in quantum games, and literally there was nothing. There were games that spoofed the quantum. And my motivation for creating Quantum Chess was to give players access to genuine quantum, to see what would happen, to see what they could come up with, to see what game mechanics are available in that space. And players that played Quantum Chess discovered effects in my game that I didn't even know were possible because I gave them access to genuine quantum, not spoofed quantum. So my motivation for this jam is to see, okay, when you have access to genuine quantum effects, what is possible, right? You can spoof all day long, but you're not going to discover anything new. That's what we're trying to do here. We're forging a new path in quantum game design. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, with that, I do want to just say thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. Spiros, Chris, Willem, thank you all for spending your time and lunch break with me today. And hopefully, ideally, we will see some of you, if not all of you, at the jam. Applications will close this weekend, so I would suggest if you are interested, go ahead and get them in so that we can start matchmaking teams and get you all notified this weekend. If you do want to learn a little bit more, if your questions weren't answered, again, joining the jam is a great opportunity to do that, as we'll have a couple of days of full-on lecture with some of these talented individuals in the room. Thank you all again, and I will see you later.
Goodbye, all.
thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
I do have a noon, so I'm going to bounce. See ya.
See y'all. And to those watching the live other places, we love you. Bye-bye. I'm going to drop the links one more time for anybody who wants them. These are links both to Quantum Realm Games as well as to Spiros and Chris. And then, of course, the last link there is for the Game Jam. We'd love to see you in there. And have a wonderful day. Thanks for stopping by, everybody.